Well, hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Jessica Leichtweisz and I'm the CEO of Hope Education Services. I'm passionate about helping parents get their questions answered about autism and making sure that you're doing everything you can to give your child the best quality of life possible. And oftentimes I will bring amazing experts on my channel, just like today, who can have so much value to share and insight. So the person I'm bringing on today, she's incredible. She's one of the OGs, the original gangsters in autism research. So she's been working with kids with autism for over 40 years. She is the best-selling author and award-winning author of the book Outsmarting Autism, and is considered to be one of the leading experts in the field of autism. She has pioneered a lot of autism training and research and is largely responsible for shifting autism treatment from what it looked like in the 60s and 70s into what it looks like today. And it's really an honor to bring her on today. We're going to be talking about the total load theory, which Patricia Lemer is the founder and the voice behind this idea of how autism, or what causes autism, and what the implications are about how we can help kids with autism because of what the cause of it is. So Patricia, welcome to the channel. I'm so excited to have you on here. It's a privilege, it's an honor. You're like one of my people, like my chicken list people I've always wanted to partner with and bring on. And I love your book, and I love your work, and I'm very grateful for everything you've done for the autism.
Well, thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your channel. And I love that phrase. What did you call me? An OG?
Yeah, the OG, the original gangster, meaning you're one of the
I
first.
love that. I've never heard that. That's
Okay.
that's really fun. Yep, I am an original gangster. I was one of the original heretics. Before we even heard about autism, I was questioning the validity of the ADD diagnosis and even before that, the learning disability kids and how we could help them with their learning issues in the late 60s, early 70s. And this total load idea that we're going to talk about today, I guess I came up with this 25, 30 years ago when people kept saying, well, what's causing these problems? What's causing learning disabilities? What's causing ADHD? And I was so uncomfortable with the idea of treating symptoms. I just wanted to know, why can't he pay attention? Why is he flapping? And at the time I was working with an occupational therapist in Boston, and she introduced me to Jean Ayers. And you may know about Jean Ayers, who was the founder of sensory integration concept and theory. And Jean Ayers had a line that I just loved so much, which is that every behavior is an adaptive response. And that was so meaningful to me because it depathologized the behavior. It wasn't that the child was behaving badly. It was that the child was trying to cope in whatever way he could. And so it was my job to try to figure out what was the meaning of this behavior. What was the child trying to adapt to? And my first introduction to that was these kids with sensory problems who put their hands over their ears if it was too loud, or didn't give you eye contact. So many autism programs have look at me in the eye and have good eye contact as a goal. But that child is trying to cope perhaps with double vision or with what they're seeing going around in circles. And so the lack of eye contact is similar to putting his hand over his ears. It's saying, I'm stressed and I can't cope with this world. And then I got involved with Dr. Bernie Rimland in the Autism Research Institute, and he says, okay, there are biological stressors too. You know, maybe this child is nutritionally deficient. Maybe he doesn't have enough magnesium or B12, or he's overdosing on some things that are stressing out his body. And he helped us understand that some of these things were things not only that children were eating, but they were craving and they were actually addicted to, like gluten and dairy. And so all of these were stressors. And then our world is stressful. So the child has to get up perhaps at 6:30 in the morning before his biological clock says it's time to get up, because school starts at 8 o'clock. And he has to take an hour-long bus ride. Or he's in kindergarten and he's not yet turned 5, and they're trying to get him to sit still and pay attention and learn how to read. And that's a stressor. Or there's a bully in his class, or the lights are flickering. And so there's a million stressors in this child's life. And so when people said, well, why does he have a learning disability? Why does he have ADHD? And now, what causes autism? Why does he have autism? The answer is everything. It's all of these stressors put together. And that's what total load is. And because we're all unique biologically and environmentally, and our families are all different, then we have different total loads. And I compare it to a deck of cards. I used to be a good card player and played a lot of bridge. And there's only 52 cards, but you never ever get the same 13 in your hand. There's an almost infinite number of ways to get a hand. And each one of these kids is like a bridge hand. It's a different combination of up to an infinite number, but about 13 stressors, just like there's 13 cards in your hand. And so we have to look at what is a child's individual load. And so I discovered this word, total load, this concept of total load, which is an engineering term. I was married to an engineer at one time, and this is a bridge term. So when an 18-wheeler goes over a bridge and the bridge collapses, what happened? Who do you blame? Do you blame the truck driver who overloaded his truck and that's what caused the bridge to collapse? Well, that might have been a factor, and it might have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But that bridge was in a precarious position before that 18-wheeler went over that bridge. And that's exactly what happens with our kids with autism. There were weather factors on that bridge. The engineering design might not have been very good. And in our kids with autism, we see a lot of stress factors before that child gets that autism diagnosis. And many of those factors are biological. He may have reflux, he may have diarrhea, constipation, red rosy cheeks when he eats something, bright red ears, he's not sleeping well, he's a picky eater. He's had strep infections and antibiotics over and over and over again. And these are all load factors that add up to that child's own individual threshold, where he then gets more and more stressed, and eventually he's over the threshold, and some doctor says he has autism. That autism didn't come overnight. There were many of these factors building up. And so my ultimate goal is for your parents to look at these stress factors as they're going on and cut it off at the pass before the diagnosis. And unfortunately, you and I in our practices, we don't see them along the way. We wait till the stress factors add up, and then the child has the diagnosis. But if we can get to new moms, new parents, and say, you know, it's not normal, it's not typical for a child to be obsessed with books at 2 and 3 and to learn how to read and recognize words. That's not where a child of 2 or 3 is. That child should be physical and out in the world. And this is telling you that something is abnormal. That's a stress factor on that child's body. So that's how I got to total load and applying that bridge factor to autism, to ADD, ADHD, to learning disabilities. And it really can be applied to anything, to Parkinson's, to Alzheimer's, to cancer. It's all the factors that come together to make this perfect storm.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And for me, you know, when parents ask me what is autism, I think this conversation starts back with what is autism and what does it mean that autism is a set of spectrum disorders, right? It's really autism are neurological differences, and there's likely different causes of autism for different people. And like you said, it did progress over time. So I have two questions about that. Number one, do you think that autism is preventable? And do you think that some of the effects of autism are reversible? And in that conversation also, you know, there was this idea when I first started working with kids with autism, it was about 13 years ago, it was at the height of this idea of the autism recovery movement. This idea that with behavioral interventions, we can make a child no longer be autistic. And that was the goal of the community for a long time. And I think now we're seeing this shift in the community, and I'm one of the pioneers of that shift, saying, well, our goal isn't to change who a person is and make a person less autistic. We know that today autistic adults don't like that term, don't like the idea of pathologizing autism, the idea of it being recoverable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that for many people with autism, there are not underlying medical issues that may be contributing to them having more difficulty. So what's the balance in really the difference between supporting a person's biology, and I have my own biological, like personal, like medical issues that I know for me, that I don't pathologize myself as a person, but I have certain things I have to address. I'm gluten-free, I'm dairy-free, because that helps my brain function better. So how can we help communicate that to parents and adults, this idea that we wanna kind of fix underlying issues to help someone be the best version of themselves, or like you said, to prevent things from happening in the first place, without pathologizing who a person is and making a person being wrong for who they are. I think there's a very fine line there.
This is a really important question, and it's a it's a very complicated question, because parents unconditionally love their child, and they don't want to see their children struggling. They don't want to see them struggling biologically. They don't want to see them struggling socially, academically. And so when the parent is the parent of a young child, the parent is the boss of that child. The parent decides whether they're going to buy goldfish crackers and let the child eat pizza every day for lunch. Or the parent says, you know, I don't think goldfish crackers are food. And I don't think eating pizza every day is really good for my child. I've got to figure out how to get some fruits and vegetables into him. So I think that it's about health, because these are health questions that precede autism. And autism, as you point out, is just a description of symptoms. It's symptoms that say you're neurologically different, or are you neurologically unsound? and it's only by somebody's opinion. We do not want to take away the essence of who the person is. And there are a lot of people with autism who are angry, and they don't want us to prevent them. They don't want us to fix them. They're happy the way they are. And I don't need them to change. They should be happy, and we should celebrate their differences. However, if they can't hold a job, if they are having trouble in their relationships, if they can't read or write, then they are suffering in some ways that I know I can help. And those helpful ways are often biological, and they don't look like they're related to reading and writing or to behaving. But if they're eating pizza every day for lunch, and they get brain fog, and then they're constipated, and then they get a headache, and then they don't sleep, those are health concerns because they undermine the health. So your very first question was, do I think autism could be prevented? I do. And I think that my goal is to have healthy children. And if we have healthy children, I think we're less likely to have autism. However, that is a continuum too of what is healthy and how do we stay healthy. And there isn't 100% agreement on how to stay healthy. And so we have to look at, do you have a problem that you want me to solve? Your child's not sleeping. I can solve that problem, maybe, but I'm going to look at what he's eating, drinking, breathing when I'm looking at his sleep issues. So my first version of Outsmarting Autism was, the subtitle was about managing and healing and preventing autism. And I had a lot of pushback on that prevention. In fact, I had a book talk scheduled that was canceled because the organization didn't like my use of the word prevention. So the second version of Outsmarting Autism, we thought carefully about the subtitle. And the subtitle of the new one is to build the healthy foundations for communication, socialization, and behavior at all ages. And I love that subtitle because it's all encompassing and it's looking at those end product skills. Everybody wants good communication. Everyone wants healthy socialization, and it's never too late. We can do this with children. And if you're an adult who's autistic and you're having trouble communicating and socializing, then there are things that we can look at if you're open to us looking at that. So I agree with you that we want to embrace individual differences as long as they're healthy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think oftentimes the issue is that we look at these things like biomedical interventions or nutrition interventions, and we apply them to someone who's autistic and think as a society they don't apply to everyone, but that's not really true. I think that this applies to everyone. I think that as times change, technology changes, health technology changes, I believe we're going to have more and more customized medicine where a person will have their individual genetics tested, and especially as the field of epigenetics is really taking off, the idea that what vitamins in a multivitamin are appropriate for me may not be the multivitamins appropriate for you. You know, if you have a methylation
Jessica, this is already happening.
It is,
because
yes, it is already happening. And I use customized medicine myself. But I think it's
so
the idea that it's for everyone. You know, I've had my blood tested, I've had my urine tested, and I use my supplements based upon my biology. And I do this regularly because our biology changes all the time.
Exactly.
So it's important in order for, I think, for everybody. And it's not just about people with autism. You know, for myself, and I said this to Patricia as I got on today, I said, oh, I'm sorry, I have brain fog today. And that's something that I have a neurological disorder myself. It's not autism, but I do get brain fog at times, and it's very much influenced by my diet. And so for me, you talk about the stresses. Well, yesterday it was raining and I worked and there's stresses in business. And then I ordered Chinese food takeout, because that's my coping mechanism, and it has MSG, which doesn't have very profound and good effect on my body. So I ate this, and then I drove home and it was stormy and I had a long ride and I was tired. I went to bed late and so all of these things combined for me, and that's your total load theory in someone who's not autistic. So if it relates to me, why wouldn't it relate to someone with autism? I think the difference is the degree in which we struggle as a result of these side effects, and everyone experiences them. It's just common sense. If you eat like garbage, right? If you're eating, and I always say, like, it's like, I use like the alien test as like, if an alien arrived to this planet, would he recognize what you're eating as food? And I think a lot of the times the answer is no. Like, if you look at these like potato chips that are like red, I mean, why do we need to put red food dye on potato chips? Because it doesn't make any sense. I think, what literally doesn't even resemble food anymore. So we have to understand is if we put these things in our body, it's going to have an impact on our behavior, an impact on our mood, an impact on our hormones, impact on our ability to learn. And that's for everyone. But the degree to which people can tolerate these stressors, whether it's poor food or lack of sleep, it's different for everyone. And so for kids with autism or adults with autism or anyone with ADHD, or even just someone like myself who I tend to be more affected than other people. If I eat one bad meal, I feel it the next day, where someone else may not. They might be able to have a cheat meal and not feel it the next day. So, what can parents do in order to support their children, knowing, okay, my child may be affected, but it's hard because what affects a child is different. We know that some people have an MTF-HRG mutation, meaning they can't chelate. Some children have a methylfolation issue, meaning they can't convert folate to methylfolate and use it. So what will work for one person? Some child might be sensitive to gluten, another child may not. A child might be, having to not be too much B12. A child may have not enough B12. So it's hard because parents, they go online and they do this research and they read these parent blogs and saying, oh, I made my kid be gluten and casein free. And within a week, they started talking more. And that might work for one child, but it may not work for another child because another child's needs may be different. So it's very difficult to have this one size fits all. There is no do this all the time. I think common sense says if you eat healthy, you're going to be healthier. I think that no one would dispute that. So, but what can a parent do if they want to get started in figuring out, how can I help my kid? Like, this sounds great. I get what you're saying. My child's not really healthy, but I think most parents don't get started down this journey because they don't know where to start. They don't know how to test to see what the issue is. So what could a parent do?
I have a couple comments. So I'm going to come back to that question in 1 minute, but before I forget, I wanted to comment on your customized medicine and tell about a company that I'm working with called Sun Genomics. Sun like in the sky, and Genomics, Genomics. And they customize probiotics. And probiotics is one area where one size certainly doesn't fit all. And the probiotics are gazillions of bugs in our microbiome, and everybody is as unique as our fingerprints. Everybody has a unique microbiome. And what Sun Genomics does is it tests a stool sample and then makes you a probiotic that balances out your microbiome. This is so important because there's so many probiotics on the market now that you can't just take it off the shelf. Like you say, parents go on the internet and say, oh, when my child was gluten-free, dairy-free, all of a sudden he started to talk. Well, good luck with that. That might work and it might not. But you have to know if that's what your child is part of your child's total load. And you have to look at the priority. If your child has strep or Lyme or heavy metal toxicity, that may or may not help because it's insufficient to overcome these other things which are more profound for your child. So what can a parent do? A parent needs to work with a health professional, not necessarily a doctor. It could be a health coach. It could be somebody like you who has learned about these different areas. It could be an OT, a PT, an SLP, a teacher even, who has read up and said, try an elimination diet. Ask your doctor for these blood tests, these stool tests. And this is really important. What I went into, I became a diagnostician. I was trained as a psychologist, and I didn't have the patience to be a psychologist. I couldn't sit there and listen to you go blah, blah, blah about your kid. I would say, this is what you need to do. And next week you'd come back and you'd go blah, blah, blah again, and you'd whine and you'd say why you couldn't do any of the things that I suggested. And I was impatient. Why didn't you do it? And this is a problem that parents sometimes know what to do and they can't, and they don't for whatever reason. So because I couldn't do that and I wasn't a patient person, I learned how to do testing. And I did diagnostic testing with cognitive measures and motor and sensory. And I had a team of people that we did testing. And we established a baseline. And we said, this is what you need to, this is where your child is. And if you do A, B, C, and D, then we'll come back and see where he is next in 6 months. But the lab testing is not generally done. So many of these families have never had a stool test, even a complete blood count, which looks at all the different mechanisms of metabolism and immunological function. They've never had a test that looks at vitamin and mineral status, which is a hair test. They've never had a saliva test looking at hormones. And so in my book, I talk about the kinds of tests that families should have. And they're all tests that any doctor can order, that any lab can do, like Quest or LabCorp or a hospital. Some of them are boutique tests if we get deep into it, but it's really important that a parent find out what is going on in that child's body. And when you go gluten-free, dairy-free, as so many of our families have, you can't just go to gluten-free cereal and gluten and dairy-free pizza and gluten-free bagels with tofu cream cheese, because your child is still nutritionally bereft. There have to be fruits and vegetables. There have to be living, growing plants and maybe some animal products in that child's diet. The parent must be a parent. And so many of our parents want to be their kid's friend. And they are tired and they're exhausted and they're frustrated. And if the child won't eat the Brussels sprouts and pork chop for dinner or the lentil soup, the parent says, do you want a peanut butter sandwich? Or can I make you a piece of pizza? And we're short order cooking for our kids when we shouldn't be. And we are worried that the kid's going to starve to death. And kids don't starve to death. They give up before we give up, if you are willing to be stalwart. The genius on this was my co-founder for Developmental Delay Resources, which was the nonprofit I founded in 1993. And her name is Kelly Dorfman. And Jessica, she would be great for you to have a video of Kelly. Kelly has a book called Cure Your Child with Food. And she calls herself the nutrition detective, which is how I got to be the autism detective, which is the name of my radio show, which I do twice a month on healthylife.net radio. And I'm excited that you're going to be on my show soon, and we're going to tape what you're doing and have parents hear you. I've been doing this for about a year. They're archived, and there's mostly parents and some practitioners who are talking about the clues that they see that their child is not healthy and how to get around this. Kelly is an expert on picky eating, and so many of our kids are picky eaters. And she wrote 2 articles about picky eating, which are on my old website, which is devdelay.org, DEVDELAY.org. It's an old, not up-to-date website, but it has over 300 articles from our from our newsletters. And there's, just put picky eating in the custom box, and you'll see that Kelly wrote these 2 articles. One was the underlying reasons for picky eating. And the number 1 reason is a zinc deficiency, because kids can't taste and they don't like these strong tastes. And so they want something that's bland and isn't going to activate and aggravate their sensory system. That's picky eating 1, is the sensory issues in picky eating and some of the biological issues in picky eating and what to do about it. And picky eating 2 is how we as parents get sucked into going along with a kid who's a picky eater and making peanut butter sandwich when we should be saying, honey, I'm sorry you don't like Brussels sprouts today, but they're going to show up in a week or 2 again, and maybe you'll even let me put them on your plate. You don't have to taste them, but you have to be in the same room with them. And if you get frustrated with your kid, Kelly talks about giving yourself a timeout and not giving the kid a timeout, but you have to calmly say to your child, I'm the boss, and this is what's for dinner, and we're not straying from this. You're part of our family, and we're all eating together. So I think, what does a parent do? A parent has to recognize that it's a problem and not fight the battles, but fight the big war. You want to win the war and lose some of the battles. And it's really important that we step up to the plate and be a parent. And the second thing is to do this testing.
Yeah, it makes sense. And, you know, so many times I see parents will say, well, my kid's a picky eater, so they're just buying snacks and they're not making dinner. And then the reality of it is that the kids, if you offer a child Oreos for dinner, a 3-year-old is going to take Oreos for dinner. So the reality of it is, if there are not Oreos in your house, then your child will eat the rice and beans and chicken, right? That's the reality, is if the Oreos are not there. But if you teach your child, well, if you refuse to eat the rice and beans and chicken, then Oreos will come for dinner. Then, and where you're going to get Doritos for dinner. And then the child is like, well, I'm just going to stop. And I'm just going to wait and hold off because I know this yucky food is going to go away and Oreos are going to appear. And it's like, as a parent, like, you shouldn't be buying that. You know, I don't eat those things in my house. And the same thing for me. So I'm a big food person. Food is my comfort. If I had potato chips in my house, I would eat potato chips every day. I don't. I have kale. So when I want like a salty snack, I put kale with olive oil and salt, and I put it in the air fryer, and I make kale chips. I can guarantee you that if there was a bag of potato chips, I would be eating that instead of kale chips. But because it's not available, I eat the kale chips, right? It's the same thing for kids. You know, I actually have a fact sheet, and parents can download it. It's actually just called Just Freaking Eat It. And you can actually download it at justfreakingeatit.com. Thank you. It's been downloaded over 4,000 times, and I don't charge anything for it, but it actually outlines the behavioral approach to introducing kids to new foods. And, you know, the common sense number 1 thing is don't keep these things in your house. You know, your kids should not be eating Little Debbie. They should not.
And shame on you for buying them.
Yeah, I mean, and that's
shame
the reality.
On you if you buy goldfish crackers.
And that's the reality, is I think that as a society, our generation is starting to be different than our parents' generation, where my generation, we eat crap growing up. I mean, there was very little nutrition in any of the food that any of us ate. You know, you should not buy Kraft macaroni and cheese. You should not, and I'm calling out companies, I shouldn't do that, but ramen is not food. Ramen does not offer your body any nutrition. There is no nutrients in it. Don't kid yourself by saying that it's fortified. It's fortified anyway with like folic acid, which can be even more dangerous for kids with methylation issues, actually can be extremely toxic. So some of the things we fortified food with are actually worse for us than as if they weren't even there, because the vitamins are synthetic. But the reality of it is if you don't buy that stuff, and don't delude yourself thinking that it's your child can be healthy, or that if you're making sacrifices and you're doing 20 hours of therapy a week and you feel like a taxi, if you're stopping at Chick-fil-A on the way to your speech therapy, you might as well not go to speech therapy, because they're not going to get anything out of it, because all of the good you're doing is being counteracted by the nutrition they're eating. Nutrition's really important.
One of the problems is that your generation, and I don't know what you said, you grew up eating crap, you know, a lot of 40-year-olds don't know how to cook. And they never ate real food. And so we have to teach them how to go to a farmer's market, when a fruit and vegetable is in season, because you can get strawberries all year round and tomatoes all year round. You don't even know what a good strawberry tastes like in June. It's a different thing than those strawberries we get from South America in the middle of winter. And so we have to learn how to cook. And cooking does not have to be onerous. And there's so many good cookbooks for autism and gluten-free, dairy-free. And now there's so many takeout or food services where if you have a little money, you can pay somebody else to do it. But you have to have real food and not junk. That's the bottom line.
Prior to COVID, I would always say that like my personal chef was the salad bar at Whole Foods. So I would just go to the salad bar at Whole Foods. I would get the vegetables already cut up. I'd just throw them in there and then make a stir fry out of it. You'd be amazed that your child would actually think it's really fun if you have like 10 different bowls of vegetables and they got to put whatever they want on their plate. And then they got to stir fry it and they got to pick what sauce and be careful with sauces, what you're putting onto them. A lot of them have MSG and yucky stuff in them, but it doesn't have to be hard. And you're right. The hard part is that like our generation, so I'm 34, we grew up eating horrible stuff. It wasn't food. It absolutely was not food, what we ate. And that's, I think, why we have health issues. And I think it's why we're passing along health issues to the next generation. I mean, the reality of it is if we're not healthy, we're not going to have healthy children. And so we, as my generation, we were really at a disadvantage because parents didn't know any better. They thought it was okay for us to eat frozen pizza. They thought it was okay for us to eat TV dinners. It's not okay to eat that stuff. It has no nutrition for your body and your body will suffer. It may not kill you immediately, but the next generation, as we see, is going to have increases in Alzheimer's, increases in MS, increases in autism, increases in ADHD. Why? Our bodies are nutritionally depleted. We don't have nutrition.
That's the total load adding up. But the most important time to eat well and to have this good nutrition is in the first 6 years of life, when that brain is new and developing. And the number one missing piece of many people's diets is good quality fat. And we haven't even mentioned fat. And fat became a dirty word because the sugar lobby overtook it. And so we started eating low fat, no fat, and they've taken fat out of everything. And that's a terrible danger to our kids because not only do they not get good quality fats, the omega-3 fats that are in fish and good nuts and seeds, and they are getting bad fats, the hydrogenated fats that are in Crisco and French fries and chicken nuggets. The brain is 60% fat, and our fats have to be ingested. And so we have to be able to eat, your kid has to be able to eat fish once in a while. And if he can't get it past his nose, then he has to take some fish oil. And my grandmother fed us cod liver oil. You know, that was the old-fashioned way to do it. We now have gummies that are made out of cod liver oil because of our spoiled kids who couldn't possibly be expected to take a pill. And we have liquid cod liver oil, which doesn't have any bad smell to it.
And I do want to talk about the fact that there are real sensory issues for children with autism where they genuinely have a difficult time. And I don't want to undermine that by when we're talking about nutrition. I don't want to undermine the fact that parents have real issues. And I've even seen it result in some cases so severe a child will end up on a feeding tube. I've seen that several times throughout my career.
It's so sad.
It is, and that is a real concern. But as a parent, you have to understand that you weigh it out. Your child, when it comes to nutrition, even if your child is having true sensory issues, if you don't ever introduce the unhealthy foods in the first place, they won't default to that. So if a child likes food of a crunchy texture or a savory texture, if you introduce salted almonds as opposed to goldfish, then when your child is craving that salty, hard texture, they're going to go to salted almonds as opposed to goldfish. If your child likes soft and pureed foods, instead of introducing pudding, introduce applesauce, introduce, just puree your own fruits, give your child whatever it is that's healthy. It really comes down to children will always select the unhealthy foods because there's things that are put in the foods like MSG, like food additives, like sugar that are addictive and that are meant to really make a child crave them. And they're not healthy for you. So I don't want to undermine the fact that your child is eating poorly, and in the event that your child is accustomed to eating snack foods and eating things that are not healthy, you may not be able to just go back tomorrow and do 100% 360. You may have to slowly introduce new foods to them and slowly kind of start to stop buying some of those old foods. But, and even if it's as if your child is really accustomed to chocolate chip cookies, maybe you might say, well, if it's any other brand other than the one I normally buy, my child may not eat it. Parents
up the quality by buying a different brand.
Yeah, exactly. And that may be true at first, but eventually your child will come around. I've rarely seen the case where a child genuinely is starving themselves. But it's very, very uncommon. It does happen, but it's very, very uncommon for that to happen. Most of the time, the kid might skip a meal, but they'll survive without skipping a meal. Intermittent fasting is actually really good for the brain. You put your body in ketosis. It is actually really good for you. So you won't be the worst parent in the world if your child skips one meal. They'll go into keto for a few hours. It'll be good for their brain development, and then they'll probably eat in the morning. That's the reality. So it's okay if your kid goes to bed without dinner once. You will not be like the worst parent.
He can do it for up to 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
He can keep on doing it if you can hang in.
I do intermittent fasting, and so I'm in the middle of a 48-hour fast right now, or I'm drinking and I'm fasting for 48 hours today because of the fact, and that's really because I did indulge like this weekend. I ate too much. I felt the effects on my body. So, as a parent, it's okay. Your child will be okay if they don't eat 1 or 2 meals. They will turn around eventually and eat the good, healthy foods. And you do want to be sensitive. Like if they try to buy foods, if they have sensory issues, try to buy foods that fit the textures they like, the taste that they like, but don't do it with like Hostess cupcakes. That's not breakfast. And I can't tell you how many times I see parents.
So some of these sensory issues too are secondary to nutritional deficits. So if you can get zinc, if it's a zinc deficiency, if it's a calcium deficiency, a magnesium deficiency, sometimes the kids will be less picky and have fewer sensory issues once their nutritional needs are met better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice. So, what should a parent do who's watching this and says, okay, you know what, guilty, and we're not making you wrong as a parent. We know that there's a lot of things, I live alone. So for me, I have myself, my dog, I have 2 bunny rabbits, and it's just taking care of me and feeding me. And I know that even sometimes, like I said, I have my moments of ordering food that I know is not good for me. As a parent, we're not trying to make you wrong about the fact that if you were making mistakes, but it is imperative. Maybe you're making all the sacrifices, but it's imperative you get your kid healthy. So Patricia, kind of in closing, what are some kind of the top 3 things, first 3 things a parent can do who says, you know what, I think you're right. I know I need to get my kid getting healthier. what are the first 3 steps they should take in starting to do that?
I think they need to look at lifestyle. And this is not just pathologizing, but look at your lifestyle. And I have a whole chapter on lifestyle changes in the book. And by lifestyle, I mean the activities of daily living. Look at diet, look at sleep, and look at your environment and how toxic it is or how calming it is. And up the quality of everything that you're doing, like one notch. Diet. Can we have a fruit or a vegetable in every meal if you're not doing it? Or how can I eat in season better? Or if I'm already eating fruits and vegetables, am I buying the best quality that I possibly can? Am I buying organic? And that eliminates some of the pesticides and the GMOs. Then I would look at the sleep patterns of your family. Does your child have a bedtime routine? A child can go days without food, as you know, as you're doing yourself. But he can't go more than 2 days without sleep without becoming psychotic. And so how can we improve the sleep hygiene of our children? Do we have a bedtime? Do we have sleep routines? Do we have a good place? Is the room dark? Did we turn off the Wi-Fi at night so it's not bombarding the child's brain? And I've made a million suggestions like this in my book. The third thing is hydration and exercise. Every child should move at least an hour a day, and we should move with them. And dogs right now are in short supply because everybody in COVID is walking their dog. You cannot get a dog. Did you know that? I have a friend who's been trying for months to get a rescue dog. There aren't any. Because people recognize the need to get outside and walk. And your children, our playgrounds are mostly open now. If you don't have a playground you can go to, make it up, jump rope, run, play outside in your yard. Outside air is much better than inside air. Look at the products that you're using for every single thing that you are doing. Look at your laundry detergent. Look at your dishwasher liquid. Look at your shampoo and your body lotion. Every one of those up the one notch. What is in it? If it has 5 syllables and you can't pronounce it, you don't know what it is, get rid of it. You want to use good quality products for every single thing. Every time you make a new purchase, up the level, one notch of the quality of what you're buying.
Yeah, that is fantastic advice. I love it. I was taking like pages of notes while you were talking, and I'm actually gonna take on your challenge of upping things just one notch. And I do live a very, very healthy lifestyle, but there's always another level. So I'm gonna.
There's always you can improve. I have a friend who is she's such a healthy person. She just moved, and she posted on Facebook. She says, "Note to others: when you move, don't pack every plastic container, even the ones that don't have lids." So she was unpacking her boxes and had these oodles of plastic leftover dishes and takeout dishes. Some of them she couldn't match the bottom with the lid. And I said, wrong. Don't pack any plastic containers with lids. Throw them all away. Use this as an opportunity to buy glass containers with non-toxic lids. And I realized, as healthy as I am and as much as I practice what I preach, I still had a cabinet of plastic containers. And I threw them all away. I spent $100 and bought all shapes and sizes. I even have a leftover dish that I think holds 2 tablespoon.
I actually love those. I have those. I use the glass lock ones, and those are great for sauces or just like hummus or peanut butter. I love those little.
Yep.
I can't get enough of them. I have like 4 or 5 of those little 2 tablespoon ones, and I like go. I sometimes they're all full for the day because I'll have one, my morning vitamins in one, my afternoon vitamins in another. That's another thing. I don't like to buy supplements that are in plastic containers. We can talk about this for hours, but we'll let our parents. We'll let the parents go. If anyone wants to get Patricia's book, it's called Outsmarting Autism. It's available on Amazon. The link to it will be in the comments below. Patricia, thank you so much for being on here. We really appreciate you.
Jessica, let me just tell people who are listening, they can go to Outsmarting Autism, and outsmartingautism.com is one of my websites, and patricialemer.com is the other, Lemer. And I have tons of videos on both of those that people can listen to. Long lectures that I've given that go into prioritizing therapies and total load, a much longer version of what we've done today. And both of them have Facebook pages. So you can like Outsmarting Autism, you can friend me on Facebook, and you will stay up to date on everything that I'm doing and new information that's coming down the pike. And also you can listen to my radio broadcasts on healthylife.net. It's the second and fourth Tuesday, and it's at 10 a.m. Pacific. It's based in California, which translates to 1 p.m. on the East Coast. And those are archived, and so it goes back 3 or 4 months, and so you can listen to old ones, and Jessica's going to be on it soon. Yes. So I hope you listen in.
Thank you. I can't wait. I'm super excited about that.
So much, Jessica. There's been so much fun.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to have you. So again, guys, we'll have all of the links to everything below. We'll have Patricia's radio show, her websites, the link to buy her book, the Sun Genomics, if you wanted to get the probiotics that she talked about, we'll have that linked. I'll have my fact sheet, Just Freaking Eat It. That will be linked on there. And as always, my website, hopeeducationservices.com. If you don't know, if you're watching this for the first time, because of COVID, I've made my entire ebook library free. So you can go on there. There are 6 books you can download completely for free. Just go over to hopeeducationservices.com, pick your book, download it, and we hope to connect with you. We're going to be doing more of these lectures just like this here on the YouTube channel, Get Autism Answers. Thank you so much, everyone.